Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a place most people never think twice about. A place you've probably walked through dozens of times. A place that should feel safe, quiet, normal. But in every town, in every city, there is one building that holds on to something it shouldn't. And for me, it was the old Briarwood apartment block. The place where I learned that shadows aren't always just shadows. Part 1. The Move-In. I moved into Briarwood on a rainy Thursday. The kind of cold, misty rain that makes the world feel blurry around the edges. I'd gotten the place cheap. Too cheap. Because the previous tenant had left abruptly. The landlord didn't say why. I didn't ask. The apartment was small, but comfortable. Room 313, top floor, end of the hallway. On the first night, as I was unpacking boxes, the power flickered. Not unusual for an old building. But when the lights came back on, I saw something in the corner. A shape. Not solid, but darker than the rest of the room. Like the shadow of a person standing perfectly still. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, turned the light off, then on again. The shape was gone. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I'd imagined it. But deep down, some small part of me already knew the apartment wasn't empty. Part 2. The first night. I went to bed around midnight. The rain finally stopped, leaving an uneasy silence in the air. Just as I began to drift off, I heard it. A soft scratching. Not from the walls, not from the ceiling, from the floor. Right beside my bed. It was slow, deliberate, almost like fingernails dragging lightly across the wood. I froze, held my breath, listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I whispered into the darkness, "Is somebody there?" The scratching stopped instantly. And then, from the far corner of the room, I heard breathing, not human breathing. Too low, too steady, like something trying to imitate a person, but not quite getting it right. My hand shot out and flicked on the lamp. Nothing. But as the light filled the room, I saw, just for a split second, the shadow in the corner pull back, flattening against the wall like spilled ink retreating from brightness. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Part 3. The History of Room 313. The next morning, I went downstairs to the landlord's office. He was an older man, tired looking, with eyes that seemed to avoid mine. Did something happen in my apartment? I asked. His shoulders tensed. What makes you say that? There's something wrong with that room. He exhaled slowly, as if deciding whether to tell me the truth. Finally, he said, "You're the third person to complain, you know." I leaned in. Complain about what? He hesitated. Then, shadows, moving on their own, watching, following. He lowered his voice. They started after a woman died in that room. She lived alone, hardly ever left. One night the neighbors heard her screaming, but by the time help arrived, she was gone. They said she'd been found sitting in the corner, staring at the wall, as if something was staring back. He swallowed, and her shadow didn't match her body. I felt the blood drain from my face. He ended the conversation there. Told me if I wanted to break the lease, he'd understand. But I didn't leave. I should have. But something about the mystery kept me there. Curiosity. The oldest and most dangerous human weakness. Part 4. The shadow begins to follow. Over the next few nights, the shadow grew bolder. At first, it stayed in the corners. Then it began appearing in the hallway, at the foot of my bed. Sometimes I'd turn on the light and see it, flat against the wall, but shaped like a person standing in a twisted posture no human could hold. And sometimes, when I walked through the apartment, it followed. Not quickly, not aggressively, slowly, one step behind. Like a child learning how to mimic movement. I tried recording it on my phone, but whenever the camera was on, the shadow simply didn't appear. It knew when I was watching. The turning point happened on the 4th night. I was brushing my teeth when I noticed that my shadow in the mirror wasn't moving the way I was. I lifted my arm. The reflection lifted its arm too. But a second later, lagging, delayed, like it had to think about copying me. And then, as I watched in horror, my shadow slowly turned its head to look directly at me. I dropped the toothbrush and ran out of the bathroom. Part 5. The woman in the corner. I decided to leave. I started packing, shoving clothes into a suitcase at 2 a.m. That's when I heard crying. A woman's voice. Soft, shaky, coming from the corner of the bedroom. I turned slowly. There she was. Not fully visible, more like a silhouette made of smoke, kneeling in the corner, exactly where the previous tenant died. Her head was bowed, her hair hanging over her face like a curtain. "Please," she whispered, "don't let it touch you." My voice trembled. "What is it?" She looked up at me, and though her face was blurred like static, her eyes were full of terror. "It wants bodies," she said. "It wants to wear them." She pointed behind me. I turned dash dash, and the whole room went black. Not dark, black. As if every light in the universe had been swallowed. And in that suffocating darkness, the shadow finally touched me. Not physically, not with hands. It touched my mind. I felt it crawling along my thoughts, searching for a way in, trying on my memories like clothing. I stumbled backward, gasping, clawing for the light switch. When I finally flipped it, the room exploded with brightness, and the shadow shrank violently, pulling away, retreating into the nearest wall like an animal burned by fire. The woman in the corner was gone, I knew then. I had minutes, maybe seconds, before the shadow tried again. Part 6. The Escape. I grabbed my bag and sprinted for the door. The hallway outside was cold, colder than winter. My breath fogged the air. As I ran, every overhead light flickered violently, buzzing like angry insects. And then, halfway down the hall, the lights began going out, one by one. Pop, pop, pop. The darkness chasing me. I bolted toward the stairwell. Behind me, I heard footsteps. But they weren't human footsteps. They were too fast and too many, like 100 feet sprinting at once. I crashed through the stairwell door and flew down the steps, nearly slipping, my heart slamming in my chest. When I reached the lobby, the final light above me flickered, and I saw it, the shadow, standing just a few feet away, stretching up the wall, as tall as the building itself, its limbs long and twisted, its head tilted at an impossible angle. It didn't move. It didn't have to. It just waited, as if it knew one day I'd have to return. I burst out the front door and didn't stop running until Briarwood was nothing but a distant broken shape behind me. Outro. Quiet, unsettling tone. I never went back for my things. The landlord called once, asking if I wanted to collect them. I told him to keep it all, or burn it. I didn't care. But sometimes In the quiet hours of the night, I swear I see it. A shadow that doesn't belong, standing in the corner of my bedroom, flat against the wall, perfectly still, waiting. Because once a shadow chooses you, it never stops following, not until it finds a way to wear you